I try to be objective with all of my sports coverage, and listen, Jacy Sheldon objectively should be suspended for this play. I just don't know in what world, in what universe you watch that play back and you go, that was a basketball play. She was trying to make a basketball move, especially with all the angles of this play.
Picture this. A player single-handedly generates nearly $1 billion for a professional sports league, yet she's making just $78,000 a year while getting systematically targeted and attacked by opponents who face laughably small fines when they cross the line. This isn't some dystopian nightmare. This is the current reality of Caitlin Clark's situation in the WNBA, and what happened during a recent game against the Connecticut Sun has finally pushed fans and media personalities to their breaking point. The incident that sparked this firestorm occurred during what should have been a routine Tuesday night game between the Indiana Fever and Connecticut Sun, but there was nothing routine about the animosity brewing on that court. Caitlin Clark and Jacy Sheldon have history dating back to their college days, when Ohio State and Iowa battled in heated matchups that left both players with legitimate bad blood. This wasn't just another game, this was personal vendetta disguised as professional basketball.
Sheldon was clearly targeting Caitlin Clark most of this game, and that is, that comes from a function of, she guarded her in one-on-one situations a lot up the court, and then rolled into a lot of doubles in the half court, but there was talking and chirping all game, and for me, it was punctuated by Caitlin Clark's final play before she came out of the game, where she stares Jacy Sheldon down, she essentially demonstrates, she's like, if you poke me in my eye, I will shoot it in yours. And she crosses her, finds the favorite spot, free throw line extended from the logo area, big fuck you 3 to Jacy Sheldon, yells at the Connecticut bench, yells at the crowd. Her and Jacy Sheldon come back together. Caitlin fires up the audience, basically tells Jacy Sheldon, you are a bum.
Every time Caitlin Clark takes the court, her opponents act like they've been booked for a main event brawl. The WNBA is doing nothing about it. Opponents aren't playing ball. They're strategically ambushing her. They're trying to injure her. Opponents bring chaos. She brings composure. And what Sophie did last night is completely valid. The WNBA has to do something about this.
As Clark backed down her defender near the top of the key, looking to create space for one of her signature three-pointers, Sheldon made her move. In what can only be described as a calculated assault, she deliberately poked Clark directly in the eye with a vicious jab that had nothing to do with playing defense. The slow motion replays from multiple angles leave absolutely no room for interpretation or excuses. This wasn't an accidental basketball play. This wasn't a hand getting caught up in normal defensive movement. This wasn't even aggressive defense gone slightly wrong. Sheldon's finger went straight for Clark's eye with surgical precision and clear malicious intent. What made the incident even more disturbing was Sheldon's reaction afterward. Instead of showing any concern or remorse for potentially causing serious injury to another player's vision, she had this satisfied smirk on her face like she had just accomplished exactly what she set out to do. That grin told the entire story about her true intentions, and it's an image that has been burned into the minds of basketball fans who witnessed this disgraceful display. But the nightmare was just beginning, because apparently one attack wasn't enough to satisfy the Connecticut Sun's thirst for targeting Clark. After the eye poke, Clark pushed Sheldon away in fury, which is exactly what any reasonable person would do when someone deliberately tries to damage their vision. Her reaction was pure human instinct, the kind of defensive response that anyone would have when their sight is threatened by a calculated attack. But instead of protecting their biggest star, the referees somehow found a way to make the situation worse by treating Clark like she was the aggressor. The incompetence on display was staggering, but the targeting wasn't finished.
Clark and Jacy Sheldon. There is a legitimate hatred there. If you guys have heard, this Ohio State team, this 2023 Ohio State team, hated that Iowa team. And this is Jacy Sheldon, who was Caitlin Clark's direct matchup in these games. Like I tweeted out, forget Angel, forget Dejanay. This is Caitlin Clark's one true rival.
Funny thing about that whole Caitlin and Jacy situation last night is it's like on a if you know thing. These two have been running the friendly fade on the court for like the last 4 years. They played in college, had great battles, so I'm not surprised last night happened.
Oh, you know what? I'm just going to be me. I don't go in there trying to predetermine anything. I'm dialed in. I need to focus on hitting my shots, making sure I'm executing the schemes right. I'm not focused on the extracurricular activities. And you know what? During that, it was just part of the game. I think the refs had a lot to do with that. It was a build-up for a couple of years now of them just not protecting, the star player of the WNBA. And so at the end of the day, I'm going to protect my teammates. That's what I do. And I'm a team player, so it's all good.
Marina Mabrey then joined the coordinated attack, shoving Clark to the ground from behind while she was still recoiling from the initial injury. This wasn't some heat-of-the-moment reaction to a play that was happening in front of her. Mabrey was completely disconnected from any basketball action when she decided to blindside Clark with a shove that could have caused serious injury if Clark had landed awkwardly. 3 separate aggressive acts against one player in a matter of seconds, orchestrated like a planned ambush, and the officials seemed more concerned with penalizing Clark for defending herself than addressing the obvious coordinated targeting. The sequence of events revealed something disturbing about the culture within the WNBA. This wasn't just random aggression or competitive intensity getting out of hand. This was a systematic effort to intimidate and potentially injure the league's most valuable player, and it was happening with the implicit approval of referees who refused to call obvious fouls or protect Clark from escalating violence. The message being sent to every player in the league was crystal clear. If you want to take cheap shots at Caitlin Clark, go ahead, because the consequences will be minimal and the officials will look the other way. Here's where the story gets absolutely insane and reveals just how backwards and corrupt the WNBA's justice system has become. Jacy Sheldon, the player who deliberately poked the league's most valuable asset in the eye in what could have been a career-ending injury, received a flagrant 1 foul and an automatic fine of just $200. $200 for potentially blinding the woman who single-handedly saved the WNBA from bankruptcy and irrelevance. Marina Mabrey's blindside shove was upgraded to a flagrant 2, resulting in a $400 fine that she could probably pay with the loose change in her car. Meanwhile, Sophie Cunningham, who finally stepped up to defend Clark with a hard foul later in the game, showing the kind of teammate loyalty that should be celebrated, was not only ejected from the game, but also hit with additional fines from the league office. The hypocrisy is so blatant, it's almost comedic if it wasn't so infuriating. Cunningham's foul was actually a legitimate basketball play, a hard screen that sent a message without targeting vulnerable body parts or attempting to cause injury, yet she faced harsher punishment than the players who coordinated an assault on Clark's face.
Look at it from behind or from the side. It's so obvious that she straight up leapt out towards Caitlin and got her right in the eye. And the more I try and watch it back and you try to be objective, there is no world where this was a basketball play. And yes, she was playing tough defense on Caitlin up until that point, but she leapt forward, and it's not like it's defensible where you can say she tried to get the ball, because her hand at that point was so far away from where the ball was. It's not like Caitlin was dribbling the ball up near her face. How she was not ejected for this, I don't know. The broadcast was talking about it, and that's why Sophie Cunningham even had the opportunity to hard foul her at the end. I don't know what you do, but the league's got to do something.
How he'd stop the fighting, he thought they meant the WNBA. What is going on? Protect Caitlin Clark at all costs, please. Enough of this. Please.
Listen, bring Caitlin Clark to the NBA right now, because the refs ain't gonna protect her. She only got one teammate, and that's her, who gonna do something about it. Like, yo, yesterday, that's malice in the palace activity. Call for it. That y'all should have been throwing hands all over the place. How do you get poked in the eye, then get thrown to the ground, and then you receive a technical foul? And don't none of your teammates want to step up, fight, squabble, none of that. They just looking like, yo, it's been, we know that y'all been targeting Caitlin Clark now. Now I'm even watching, I'm like, hold on, what? Like, how are y'all letting this happen? How are y'all not protecting this girl? Now, she clearly is a superstar, right? But there's plenty superstars in the WNBA, and don't none of them get treated the way Caitlin Clark get treated. Now, y'all gonna mess up and ruin the whole numbers, your ratings, your all that, if y'all don't have Caitlin Clark in y'all's league. So y'all better start acting right. I'm telling you.
The math is simple and the message couldn't be clearer. Attack Caitlin Clark's eyes and pay the equivalent of a nice dinner, but defend her and face ejections, suspensions, and significant financial penalties. This backwards incentive structure has created an environment where targeting the league's biggest star is not only acceptable but practically encouraged, while protecting her is treated as unsportsmanlike conduct. The WNBA has essentially put a bounty on their own golden goose, and then punished anyone who tries to protect her from the hunters. To understand why this incident has created such an unprecedented uproar across the sports world and beyond, you need to fully grasp the astronomical economic impact that Caitlin Clark brings to the WNBA, and how her treatment represents the most backwards business decision in professional sports history. According to detailed financial analysis from Dr. Ryan Brewer at Indiana University, Clark was responsible for 26.5% of all WNBA economic activity during her rookie season alone. Think about that for a moment. More than a quarter of the entire league's financial success was tied to a single player who was making just $76,000 in her first year. But those numbers only tell part of the story. Clark's impact extends far beyond simple revenue generation. Before her arrival, WNBA games struggled to fill high school gymnasiums. Television ratings were so low that networks treated women's basketball as charity programming, and merchandise sales were practically non-existent. Clark didn't just boost these numbers, she completely revolutionized them. Arenas that hadn't sold out in years suddenly had waiting lists for tickets when the Fever came to town. Television ratings didn't just improve, they tripled and quadrupled when Clark was playing. Merchandise featuring her name and number became some of the fastest selling items in women's sports history. Dr. Brewer's projections for the current season are even more mind-blowing and reveal the true scope of Clark's value to the league. He estimates that Clark could generate nearly $1 billion in total economic impact for the WNBA this season. That's billion with a B, a number that dwarfs the entire previous history of women's professional basketball combined. When a single player is responsible for that level of economic transformation, allowing her to be targeted and potentially injured becomes not just morally wrong, but the kind of financial negligence that should result in executive terminations and ownership changes.
This has been a very contentious 12 hours since the game. A lot of people on ESPN saying ridiculous things, like Monica McNutt saying she had no problem with Marina Mabrey's foul. And I look at that in comparison to the Sophie Cunningham foul, which I have seen people say has no place in the league, unsportsmanlike, when that actually is a lot more sportsmanlike than the Marina Mabrey one. Marina Mabrey was completely disconnected from the play, had nothing to do with it. There was no play even going on when Marina Mabrey did that.
But what you have in Caitlin Clark is a once-in-a-generation talent. She was massively successful in college, and that's transcended into the WNBA, where she's leaps and bounds above pretty much most every player there. You're allowing her to get beaten up on the regular during games, flagrant fouls, people trying to take her eye out. That's happened a couple different times last year and this year. And you're not protecting your...
The public outcry has been unlike anything the WNBA has ever experienced, reaching levels that have forced mainstream entertainment figures and sports personalities to take notice and speak out against the league's failures. Jimmy Fallon, whose Tonight Show reaches millions of viewers who might never watch a basketball game, used his monologue to directly address the WNBA leadership with a message that resonated far beyond sports fans. What is going on in the WNBA? Protect Caitlin Clark at all costs. Please, enough of this, he said, his frustration evident even through his typically lighthearted delivery. When mainstream entertainment personalities who have zero financial stake in women's basketball are publicly calling out the league's failures on national television, you know the problem has transcended sports and become a cultural conversation about basic fairness and competent business management. But Fallon wasn't alone in his criticism. Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports, who commands a massive following of sports fans and gambling enthusiasts, didn't mince words in his takedown of the situation. He called the attackers jealous loser punks and suggested they should go play in a recreational league where no one cares about them, a sentiment that perfectly captured the frustration of millions of viewers. What makes this mainstream media attention particularly damaging for the WNBA is that it's exposing their systematic failures to audiences who might have just started paying attention to women's basketball because of Clark. These new fans, many of whom have never followed the WNBA before, are being introduced to the league through stories about their biggest star getting attacked while the organization does nothing meaningful to stop it. This is exactly the kind of negative publicity that can kill a growing fan base before it fully develops, undoing years of progress in a matter of weeks. The fan response has been even more explosive and organized than anything the WNBA has dealt with in its entire history, with social media campaigns sprouting up across every major platform demanding real consequences for those who target Clark. Multiple petitions have emerged within hours of the incident, calling for fines in the tens of thousands of dollars rather than the insulting pocket change currently being handed out. Some fans are arguing that anything less than a month's salary isn't a real deterrent, and that the current system essentially gives players permission to assault Clark for less money than they spend on designer handbags.
One could argue she is an A-level star, and they don't even have B and C level stars. From A, it drops to D. She is the entire league. And they allow things like this to happen last night against the Connecticut Sun.
Watch when Caitlin Clark is trying to create some space. It looked like she just got hit in the eye there.
Ooh, and Marina Mabrey. I missed that one, Edona.
Oh, I missed that one too.
Like, it wasn't just a hard foul accident. Like, there's nothing Caitlin Clark has done in response at this point. So what's the point in bowing up into her face? And immediately, I don't think Caitlin's even extended her arm to push her away. Maybe the coaching is, hey, if you're physical with Caitlin Clark, it's one of the only ways to stop her. Yes. So, like, they're all encouraged to be really physically aggressive. But it's hard not to look at this and think there's animus towards her. You got to protect Caitlin Clark. She is the WNBA.
The hashtag demanding justice for Clark began trending across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok as supporters flooded the attacker's social media accounts with criticism that ranged from calling them unprofessional and bitter to questioning whether they belong in any professional league. But this wasn't just random internet outrage that would blow over in a few days. Fans are creating detailed posts with video breakdowns, side-by-side comparisons of penalties, and financial analyses showing exactly how little these fines mean to professional athletes. The organization and sophistication of the fan response has caught the WNBA completely off guard. These aren't casual viewers making noise for a day or two. These are engaged fans who understand the business side of sports and are demanding systemic changes to how the league protects its most valuable assets. They're not just upset about this single incident, they're furious about a pattern of inadequate punishment that has been building for months, and they're finally organizing their voices into a movement that the league can't ignore. Some fan groups have even started proposing alternative punishment structures and compensation systems that would actually protect Clark while ensuring those who target her face meaningful consequences. But here's the part that should absolutely terrify WNBA executives and keep them awake at night: the catastrophic business implications of their continued failure to protect their golden goose. The Indiana Fever's franchise valuation jumped from $90 million to $340 million in just 1 year, almost entirely due to Clark's arrival. That's a $250 million increase in value attributable to a single player, the kind of overnight transformation that business schools will study for decades. The ripple effects extend far beyond just the Fever's valuation. Teams across the league have seen their attendance numbers skyrocket when Clark comes to town, with some franchises selling more tickets for a single Fever game than they used to sell for entire seasons. Television ratings don't just improve when Clark plays, they explode to levels that networks never thought possible for women's basketball. Merchandise sales have gone through the roof, with Clark jerseys outselling established superstars from other sports. Corporate sponsorship deals that the WNBA could never dream of landing are now being negotiated specifically because of Clark's marketability and reach.
Caitlin Clark is non-disrespectable. That's not even a word, but I'm going to just use it for the point of my video. You cannot disrespect the nucleus of women's basketball and act like it's not going to be a problem, man. Oh, Caitlin Clark could do this, but other people can't. You goddamn right. Because she's the center of women's basketball. We've said this a million times. Clark changed the game. She is the nucleus, the center, the black hole. Everything revolves around Clark with women's basketball, man, because of her influence.
Caitlin Clark is the golden goose. Every game she is dropping golden eggs. and they are trying to strangle the golden goose to death. There's jealousy, there is hate. Everyone in the league seems to hate the fact that Caitlin Clark is making the league relevant. If I were advising Caitlin Clark, I would say start your own pro basketball league for women. I don't know why she benefits from the WNBA at all. She could go out, she is the draw for women's basketball, and set up her own league. She might even be able to own the majority of the league. She could probably become a billionaire. Set it up with far fewer teams. You play far fewer games. Heck, they did it with Live Golf. I think the audience would follow Caitlin Clark wherever she goes.
Yet despite all of this unprecedented success and financial windfall, the league is allowing their billion-dollar asset to be systematically attacked by players with grudges and agendas, risking hundreds of millions in revenue for the sake of maintaining a disciplinary system that treats eye-poking as equivalent to a parking ticket. The business negligence is so obvious and extreme that it borders on criminal incompetence. Any other industry would have fired every executive responsible for allowing such mismanagement of their most valuable asset, but the WNBA continues to operate like Clark's safety and success are optional rather than essential to their survival. The solution to this crisis is straightforward, but it requires the WNBA to acknowledge the reality of their situation and act with the urgency that their financial future demands. Caitlin Clark isn't just another talented player in a league full of athletes. She is the economic engine that drives the entire organization and the reason why investors, sponsors, and fans are paying attention to women's professional basketball for the first time in decades. Protecting her isn't just about fairness, sportsmanship, or doing the right thing, though those should be reason enough. It's a business necessity that should override every other consideration when making disciplinary decisions. The current fine structure isn't just inadequate, it's financially suicidal when that level of economic impact is at stake. When a player who generates nearly $1 billion in economic activity can have her vision threatened for a $200 fine, you're not running a professional sports league, you're running a circus where the performers are encouraged to attack the star attraction. This level of mismanagement would be laughable if the consequences weren't so serious for the future of women's basketball. If the WNBA was serious about protecting their billion-dollar investment and operating like a competent business organization, the entire disciplinary framework would be restructured around the reality of Clark's value. Meaningful penalties would involve significant percentages of annual salaries rather than amounts that players can pay from their coffee money without feeling any financial impact whatsoever. A real deterrent would fine players like Sheldon a minimum of $25,000 for deliberately targeting Clark's eyes or other vulnerable areas, representing roughly 10% of a typical WNBA salary and making it a genuinely painful consequence that would force players to think twice before attempting similar attacks. For repeat offenders or particularly egregious attacks like coordinated targeting or attempts to cause serious injury, fines of $50,000 or more, along with automatic multi-game suspensions, would send the unmistakable message that if you want to play in the WNBA, you respect and protect the player who has made the league financially viable. The mathematics are simple: lose Clark to injury and lose hundreds of millions in revenue, or implement meaningful punishments and preserve the economic miracle that has transformed women's professional basketball. The WNBA stands at a crossroads that will define not just the future of women's professional basketball, but whether they can maintain the incredible momentum and financial success that Caitlin Clark has single-handedly created for their organization. They can continue to allow their biggest star to be targeted while hiding behind pathetic fines that insult the intelligence of everyone watching, treating billion-dollar economic impact as if it's worth less than a speeding ticket. Or they can finally recognize that Caitlin Clark's success is their success, that her safety is their financial security, and that protecting her should be the top priority of every executive, referee, and decision maker in the organization. The fans have made their voices heard with an intensity and organization that the league has never experienced before. Mainstream media has taken notice and begun asking uncomfortable questions about competent business management and basic player safety. The economic data is undeniable and shows exactly what's at stake if they continue down this path of negligent mismanagement. International leagues, especially in Europe, are watching this situation closely and could offer Clark better protection, respect, and compensation if the WNBA continues to fail her. The question now isn't whether the WNBA should change their approach, it's whether they have the intelligence and business acumen to recognize what's obvious to everyone else. They're sitting on the biggest phenomenon in women's sports history, and they're actively undermining it through their own incompetence. The choice is theirs, but the consequences of getting it wrong could cost them everything they've gained in the Clark era and return women's professional basketball to the irrelevance and financial struggles that defined it before she arrived. The clock is ticking, the fans are watching, and the billion-dollar question is whether the WNBA will wake up and protect their golden goose, or whether they'll continue to strangle the very player who saved their league from bankruptcy and obscurity.